Have you ever heard of a place where even the silence screams? A place so cursed, so ancient, that even the wind seems to avoid it. I'm not talking about urban legends or bedtime ghost stories. I'm telling you something that actually happened. Not to me, but to someone I knew, Daniel. And once you hear it, you will never be able to unhear those whispers again. Daniel was one of those people who didn't believe in ghosts. Not really. He was a trekker, a thrill seeker, always chasing the adrenaline of the unexplored. And in one summer, he decided to take his obsession a step further. He, along with his three friends, Tanya, Moise, and Arif, planned a trip to a forgotten valley, a place so remote it didn't even appear on Google Maps. The only clue was an old, torn piece of colonial-era map Daniel had found in an antique shop. Scrawled in faded ink at the edge of the map were the words, "Welcome to our kingdom." They thought it was a joke, a local myth maybe, but Daniel, he was fascinated. So they packed up, rented a jeep, and began their journey. The path was treacherous, narrow, mud roads, snaking around cliffs with no guardrails, a thick mist swelling their headlights, and in every silence that grew heavier with each passing mile. No birds, no wind, just the occasional snapping of twigs, not from their own movement, but something else, something trailing them. They finally arrived at the edge of a dense forest just before sunset. Trees towered like ancient sentinels. Their branches were dry, twisted, like frozen hands reaching for the sky. The forest was still, too still, but Daniel felt drawn in, like the trees themselves were expecting him. They found a narrow trail, overgrown with moss, leading deeper into woods, and after walking for about half an hour, they saw it, a massive stone gate, crumbling, but still standing. Above it was a moss-covered plaque that read in carved Gothic letters, "The Kingdom." Moise laughed nervously. "Guess we found the damn kingdom." Tanya frowned. "It's just ruins. Probably some old British fort." But as they passed under the arch, the air shifted. It was colder, heavier, and suddenly they heard it. A whisper, barely audible. Just one word, carried by the wind. "Welcome." They thought it was a trick of the mind, just the atmosphere playing games. But as the night fell and they explored what remained of the ancient stone structure, things got worse. The palace ruins were like a maze, halls without ends, rooms that led back to themselves, staircases that climbed but never reached the floor. Mirrors still hung crooked on the moldy walls, and in one of them, Tanya saw a reflection that wasn't hers. A girl wearing a black gown with no eyes, just hollow sockets, dripping black tears. She screamed, turned around. No one was there, but the mirror was cracked now, even though it hadn't been moments ago. That night, they lit a fire in the middle of the courtyard, too scared to sleep inside. Arif kept joking, trying to lighten the mood. Moise was unusually quiet. Daniel just stared into the dark, as if something out there was watching. And then the whispers returned. Not one voice, but hundreds. Children, laughing, whispering the same phrase over and over. Welcome to our kingdom. The fire flickered violently, as if a gust had passed. But there was no wind. Suddenly, but every path led back to the palace. The same tree, the same whispers. Even the sun looked dimmer. Tanya snapped. She ran into the woods alone, saying she saw someone waving at her, a woman in white. Daniel and Arif chased her, but she vanished, just disappeared. In her place stood a little girl with twisted feet, her head cocked unnaturally to one side, her skin grey, eyes pitch black. She smiled and said in a child's voice, "Don't worry, she belongs here now." And then she vanished like mist. The night was the worst. The walls of the palace ground. Hands reached from the mirrors. Blood seeped from the cracks in the stones. And Arif, he started humming the same lullaby Moise heard. He said his dead mother was calling him. Said she was waiting in the mirror. And then she walked into one, shattered it with his head. There was blood everywhere, but no body. Not because he didn't know the way, but because he didn't exist anymore. I met Daniel once, outside that same antique shop, but he looked different, pale, like a shadow of who he was. He handed me the same torn map, said nothing, just smiled and whispered, "You are invited now."